Welcome to Nomadic Diaries, the podcast for expats and nomads exploring what it means to belong in our globally mobile world. I'm Megan Norton-Newbanks, the co-host for the series The Belonging Project, and today's episode is a little different. It's just me. Hi. I want to take you behind the scenes of a project that I spearheaded. It's a project that started with a whisper of an idea and then snowballed into an emotional avalanche. So that project, it's a book now called Letters Now Sent, and it's a collection of letters from over 90 contributors. So let me start at the beginning. I was very inspired by Ruth Van Ryken's memoir, Letters Never Sent. She writes to her parents in letters form. And so I thought, well, what could a book look like if I invited people like us, people who've lived cross-culturally in, like the liminal, the layered, the messy spaces of growing up cross-culturally to write about their experiences in letter form. So what resulted was a book that is not a compilation of essays or journal articles. It's a compilation of letters, these real, signed, vulnerable words to people who have shaped our stories. Honestly, it kind of felt like a social experiment. And spoiler alert, it was, and I think it still is. One of the contributors, Joy Adewumi, shared, writing her letter, quote, brought back memories I do not revisit often, but which have formed an integral part of who I am today. She called this experience of writing a letter to her dad emotional. And over again, when I got a letter contributed to this project, I heard from the writer how many tears they cried, or also how much laughter they had in revisiting memories. So some of these letters are written with laughter echoing still in the background, and yet others are really soaked in grief, in regret, or quiet gratitude. Some of these letters are love letters to self or to others. So these letters are written to many different people. Some are written to parents, some to grandparents, children, grandchildren, mentors, including Ruth Van Ryken, and there's an entire section written to younger selves. One contributor, Miriam Navid Atamofore, calls the book, quote, an archive of soul and story, vulnerability and voice. One of the letters that has stayed with me comes from Chris O'Shaughnessy. He is a well-known TCK speaker and author, but also just a kid once. And he was standing on the playground with a friend, as we can all relate to recess and having those friends who befriended us when we were the new kid. So here's what Chris wrote to his childhood buddy, Chris P. Chris P., your demonstration of empathy, even though we didn't have the words for it back then, was foundational in shaping how I saw other people. Unknowingly, you inspired me to be moved by others in different cultures spanning the globe. Honestly, that skill set has been an ingredient in so many of my endeavors. As a CCK armed with a lot more language and framework now, I can confidently say that you contributed in setting the course for where I am now. Thanks for throwing a ball at me. I'm still reverberating from it in a good way. It's these kinds of stories in the letters in this book, these seemingly small moments of kindness or connection that turn into a lifelong direction that the writers talk about. So we don't always realize how we're impacting someone while, for example, we're eating lunch at an international school or saying goodbye at yet another airport. But these letters remind us we are impacting people. That means we belong. Another letter that absolutely gutted me in the best way comes from a U.S. Foreign Service mom, Susie Brown, and she writes to her sons. Let me read the first part of her letter. She writes, "Dear boys, we've talked so many times about change. We've experienced big, hard changes, our little family unit. One of the prices we pay with this foreign service vagabond life, a dear high price, is the stretching of the connection to extended family, resulting in knitting together our nuclear family that much tighter. Know that the resilience you create for yourself with these repeated cycles through new kid, staying kid, moving kid helps you to develop your sense of self and your ability to land well and reconnect. I know that doesn't make it easier just because it is known, but know that I know that and acknowledge that it is hard. It is worth it, though, really." I love this letter so much because it showcases the reality behind passport stamps and high mobility and being the new kid. I love what she says, the cycle of being the new kid, the staying kid, and the moving kid, because that's part of my story of a 3-year stay in country. She talks about the closeness and the cost. So, how does this book, Letters Now Sent, relate to belonging? This is the word we all want, but I think we can't define sometimes without sounding like we're quoting a self-help book or a really deep fortune cookie. What I've learned from curating this book, Letters Now Sent, is that belonging really isn't about fitting in. It's about being seen, even in the mess, especially in the mess. And this book shows the mess. These letters don't offer closure, they offer presence. They don't wrap up stories with bows. They really hand you the emotional yarn and say, good luck. And you know what? That's real. That's what living between cultures is. It's sweet and salty, spicy and sour. Well, that sounds like the world's most confusing trail mix. But really, these letters might make you cry or laugh, snort. Others might punch you directly in the gut or heart. One moment, I feel like I'm saying, wow, this person really gets me. I really resonate with what they're saying in their letter. And then the next minute, I'm Googling, why does nostalgia hurt physically? So every letter in this collection is a piece of someone's search for a kind of belonging. Sometimes they find it in a person, but sometimes it's in a memory, a food, a childhood pet, a place that no longer exists except in language and longing. And maybe that's what really Letters Now Sent is all about. It's not about finding the perfect place or tribe or label, but about really realizing that in our weird, wonderful, wandering lives, we're not alone. We belong when we let ourselves be known. I also think this book embodies belonging because it helps you recognize pieces of yourself, sometimes in the words of someone you've never met. These are not just quote unquote nice letters. I believe they're really necessary letters for any globally mobile person to read and to relate to. These letters might wreck you a little bit in the best way, but they might also help you remember that you're not alone in questions that you're asking. It is a book that is messy, lovely, layered, and deeply human, just like us. And so I want to end with saying that what I found and what I'm so proud about with this book in compiling over 90 people's stories is that sometimes being a part of someone else's story is the most sacred kind of belonging there is. Thank you so much for spending this episode with me. Thank you for listening to Nomadic Diaries, The Belonging Project. It would mean the world to Doreen and me if you would share this series with an expat, nomad, TCK, or anyone whom you think would benefit. So long for now. All my love. Take care. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Shalom. Sayonara.